welcome to Vibe Osmosis. How you doing today?
What's up, Jeffrey? How you doing?
Oh, it's been a fun one. So I've been listening to your music. Yeah, I seen that you got a new single out, The Afraid.
Yep, afraid.
Um, go
Turn up
ahead
the
and
silence. Yep, afraid.
yeah, go ahead and introduce yourself and what you do and your new song.
All right. My name is Rusty Santos. I'm a producer, mixer, and I'm an artist who's also records his own solo jams with myself and with friends. I got a new single out that I made with my longtime collaborator Jesse Lee and another recent collaborator of mine, Noah Kittinger. It's called Afraid, and um, yeah, I make psychedelic pop music for good people.
Yeah, yeah. The last released that was full 9 songs was the New Wave in California.
Yep.
What introduced you to doing the new wave in California? Like what brought on the new wave term for you?
Well, it was like about it was from that it was kind of like a play on the new age. How in California you got all these new age shops and new age people, and then there's these crystals. And there's a song where I say meet me in a head shop. Um, and then meditation crystals new wave in California. So it was just for me it was kind of um like it's so different than the new wave of like London or Manchester where you think like um Joy Division, New Order, or even like No Wave New York, DNA, and um bands like that, where California, it's like this new age thing, and it was a play on that. Coming from New York City, where I lived for so long, it just seemed to make sense to
Yeah.
fully take on that West Coast persona for that album.
So like the first song, I think it's what Focus.
Yeah.
Yeah. That has a really cool aesthetic and sound, like with the synths, and like I wondered like what kind of inspired like the riffs and like how long it took to start working on the track and getting it done.
Well, yeah, thanks for that. I made that with my friend Austin, who goes by the name of Main Key, and we were just, making a lot of beats together, and then that one was done pretty quickly. Um, and he did like the main beat that we started with, and I did play some synthesizers that you hear on there, like especially like the breakdown and. But
Yeah.
the main riff was just that was the first thing, and then I started writing lyrics to that. And yeah, there was this kind of like this part of the chorus where I stuttered my voice, and it just kind of made sense to put that into the song. So there's that glitch part where it's like I got emotional bullet scars, and yeah, it just sort of that became like a real hook in the song, and and then yeah, well, actually I remember it was cool on that one too. I played real drum kit on it too, on top of the program beats. And I'm not a drummer, so that was an interesting twist for me, and it seemed to just make sense as a start off song for the album. I started releasing solo music last year, and it had just been like I'd been a producer for a long time, and one thing about being a producer is that you stack up a lot of songs with various artists, and what I like about making my own music is I just kind of get to drop it when I feel like I'm ready. So it's more of like a uh, for my spiritual, my mental health, and that's what High Reality was about last year, and New Wave in California this year, and then now I'm just doing singles. Is what I'm feeling, because I still have songs that I'm making, but it seems to kind of make sense in terms of once of a song and a single, and I'm getting into making these videos and stuff to go with it too,
Yeah.
which has been cool. I mean, it's just amazing what you could um, like. like I've always been into software for making audio, and then now I'm just learning this video software, and there's all kinds of stuff you could do to like complement the sound. So it's been fun.
Right. So one of the biggest things, about being a producer, you having to actually be there while stuff is happening.
Yeah.
Whenever it comes to recording your own music, are you kind of like, shit, I wish I had like, three other people sitting here like moving the mics or whatever while I'm, like either playing guitar or whatever you have going on?
Well, I think with the first album I released last year, I did everything myself,
Yeah,
and I
high
did
reality.
yeah, and that one I wasn't. I was just like those songs came from like a place of healing because I'd gone through some difficult life circumstances. But all the stuff that I've made since then, like I've just has happened in other sessions, and I'm just jamming with people, and it seems pretty apparent early on, and like when we're jamming them, like, oh, this song's gonna work for my solo thing. And part of that is just that it has like a sort of psychedelic vibe that matches. And then the other thing that'll happen if I just start writing vocal parts and coming in, it'll make sense that way. So um, I think almost everything on New Wave in California and all the songs that I got slated to release coming up,
Yeah.
I've definitely made with other collaborators. So I don't yeah I don't feel like I need to have anyone moving things around. It's all just there, and that's one of the cool things too is because I can mix and master stuff myself too. I get to whole it just allows me to do the whole process, and then now I'm taking it even a step further, like I was saying with like making videos and things like that myself too. So um, yeah, it's um, it a lot of the music once it doesn't really leave this room, as you might say,
Yeah. With Afraid, what was your process on recording this one?
Well,
It
that one
started.
started with me and my friend Jesse, and he was actually came up with the guitar chords on it, and it was like Jesse's an amazing drummer, and he did, and then but it was like this kind of role reversal, and then we programmed some drum parts like that were like loops out of real drums, so it was like program parts made out of real drum parts.
Yeah.
And then I played a keyboard part over the whole song that ended up being the vocal melody, and then I just wrote lyrics to match that keyboard melody, um, which and it all came together pretty quickly. And then I guess maybe before I did the keyboard melody, I did the piano parts, which are just sort of punctuating it. And then later that night, my friend Noah came by, and then he added like I had just finished the lyrics and I recorded. I'm like, Noah, check this out. You got to play bass on this. And like two takes, second take, he did it the whole song straight up, and that was we never touched any of the parts since then. Um, yeah, so that it just
Nice.
I mean, most of the songs that I have been releasing are made in a day, like or even less than a day. Like like a couple hours, 4 hours is a good is sort of how long it takes me to do one of these. But then on definitely like on New Wave in California, I had like a lot of featured artists and stuff like that. And so that obviously um, would require separate sessions and things like that. But for the most part, I just would. It's all just sort of done in one go. But right now, I am kind of getting into different approaches to things, and I feel like I've learned so much just being a producer that's come back to inform my solo music, and it'd be interesting to see what happens next. Maybe doing things a little actually the song I was working on earlier today, I had a version I finished, but I'm keeping parts of it, and I'm revisiting it with like an entirely new vocal approach. And that's something I'm kind of
Right.
thinking soon, like where I was where on everything that you've heard so far, the vocals felt very much just inspired in the moment, and I wanted to put that across. But now that I'm thinking, I'm almost looking like a producer at myself, and I'm trying to think about like building out the vocals. So I think
Yeah.
like Afraid might be the last song in that wave of music that you heard this year from the new wave in California music. Yeah.
Now, I want to get into like the actual like writing process. So like, are you writing these songs like before you get into like jamming, or you start jamming and creating, and then you find out like what to start writing lyrically? Because right, a lot of these melodies are very like straight to the point, and like also like fit in pockets and stuff like that. And but the editing on this new one is really cool. So I kind of wonder like what was your focus on?
Well, all of the songs on New Wave in California and Afraid, I just wrote on the spot, in the session. So I didn't have any parts going it through. Or I mean, there's occasionally I would use something that I had already, I would quote myself from something that I had an idea, but it was almost always just written at the same time as I was making the instrumental with my friends and collaborators. On the
Mm-hmm.
album from last year, High Reality was quite the opposite. I started with the vocals and the lyrics and made guitar demos and built the songs out in a much more, you might say, traditional way. Where and some of those songs I had worked on since I was a kid. Like I had like a song like Master Zodiac. I started
Great.
when I was 19 years old and finally released it last year, which is just a very, that one's probably for the record books almost as far as how long a song would take to make. But yeah, so this I think this that yeah, it's a total opposite approach. And yeah, I do think what's one reason I like to release now that I finally decided I was going to start releasing solo music again. I decided I want to release it as close to when I finished the music as possible, just so that way I could like try to keep it so that what I'm putting out is as close to is currently what I want to be doing as a solo artist as and like but still there's a bit of a lag. Like I think Afraid I finished in April and I didn't put it out till November.
Okay, gotcha. That is
But
quite a big time.
yeah, but that's because I had finished Afraid before I released New Wave in California.
Okay.
Um, but because I finished New Wave in California in February, and
Yeah.
that's just how it is. You know how it takes a second to get things. So now I have a lot other songs that are I hope to get out early next year or even later this year, and try to get on track. So we're having them come out as close to when they're finished as possible.
Now let's get into some interesting vibos. All right, I'll throw out some curveballs. If you had a time machine, would you go forwards or backwards and to win?
Oh, that's interesting. I think I would go forward just because I'm really interested in what the world's going to be like and what things are what things might happen. I mean, um, but I guess if you go far enough forward and far enough backwards, it doesn't make a difference.
Yeah, I'm like a big believer of the butterfly effect, so I'm just kind of like, do I have to just like get there and stand there and like pretend like I'm not gonna like break a twig or mess something up or kill a bug that starts a whole cycle.
I've thought about this before. Like I've had these like weird thought exercises where I imagine there's this like in the future we might have these chambers where you go you could just say I'm gonna sign out for 10 months and you go hibernate for 10 months and then you come back out and you're the exact same age as when you went in, and you could just sort of offset your life so that if you wanted to see what happens 80 years from now you can wait and see, but the only thing is you can never go back, and
Yeah,
that's almost like a form of time travel right there.
and you would have to like what cut yourself off from like everything that is current and like live in a certain time period. So that part I guess would be a little bit tricky of like not really using the internet to the biggest extent if you use internet at that point.
Well, in the future when we like I imagine if we're like traveling in space between stars, everybody's going to be on these different times because they do that. At least according to the movies, they put you in a little two or a capsule,
Yeah.
and you sleep for however many years it takes you to get there. And so I think
Right.
that's just going to be like, well, there are going to be all kinds of people doing stuff like that. But I think one thing it would be really interesting to go back in time as well. Um, it's also from mostly what we know is it's possible to travel forward in time just by moving very fast, but we don't know any way to travel back in time. So
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I at least the the option we discussed is the most based it in current technology,
Right.
or that we know. I found out an interesting little anecdote about physics that the higher elevation you are on the planet, the the more time passes. So if you're on a mountaintop, 14,000 feet in the air, and somebody's at sea level, and then you leave for a certain amount of time, the person at sea level would have experienced that as a shorter amount of time than the person on the mountaintop.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, like the egg drop situation as well.
yeah, I don't. Yeah, don't ask me to explain how it is. I read it in like a physics book for non physicists.
Same thing. Like whenever I watched Oppenheimer, I thought it was really interesting how they kind of explain how the the time distance it took to actually experience that debris and that feedback or hearing the sound and
Uh
how the
huh.
sound would be different. And I just would be like, okay, like just imagine that like being like on echo, but you're not able to hear what's getting echoed.
Yeah.
You know, on the same level of like where did the penny drop and that created like such a big ripple.
Well,
Yeah, and like in your music, you kind of talk about space and stuff. Would you actually go and live on planet if you could on a different planet?
I feel like we're in space at the moment, so it really depends on what they have me doing over there. I like working on music, so if I get to work on really good music, I'll go wherever. But
True.
I'm pretty attached to Earth, just like all of every human who has ever existed. We have yet to have anyone leave this planet in any kind of permanent or extended way, and let alone culture has never left this planet. So, um, yeah, I feel very terrestrial.
Yeah, I guess at the same time, like until we have advanced technology, you'd be so busy in space trying to maintain your life in space that you wouldn't really get to have time to like sit around and play music. That's my perspective. Like I don't know what kind of fucking time they got up there. Like you know, what do you
You,
do whenever you're
I don't
finally
know. It
space?
depends on systems. I always liked air travel because I like when I have to go to different countries, usually for work stuff or projects, and I always feel like I get to be free from the stresses of life when I'm in the airport and these non-temporal like these what do they call this um liminal spaces, yeah.
Now, to bring up some of the sci-fi aspect phenomenon, what kind of movies have you been watching lately?
Oh, I watched a Kurosawa film, was the most recent one. um I, which is very old. It was like The Hidden Fortress, and I thought it, Kurosawa is one of my favorite directors, but that was a good one. Um, and I'm struggling to remember the other any other movie that I've seen recently. But I know I have.
Are you a Netflixer, a YouTuber, Hulu? What kind of vibe?
Oh yeah. I earlier this year I got rid of all my subscriptions. I used to have a Netflix and stuff like that,
They're
but
ridiculous now.
well, yeah, I decided I didn't want that, and I've been I definitely like I'm a reader, and I also like the audiobooks. That's been a major technological shift, or coming from the internet, you can listen to books, so you could do other things while you're reading, which is just wild.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, definitely.
like especially like go on walks and things like that, because I spend a lot of time in the studio. So if you go on a walk and then you're reading the book, then you're doing something a little more active. Um, but the yeah, as far as like um I mean I went through a lot of the Nicholas Rogue movies again. I really like that. I feel like I'm mentioning all of, I've been watching a lot of old movies. So yeah. I did see the Oppenheimer though. That was good. Um it was very historical. Like I didn't like coming from the director of Memento and
Yeah.
what's the other
Nice
one that he
one.
did? The
Some
what?
Batman.
Yeah, no, but he did the with Leonardo DiCaprio and they're going each other's dreams. Inception.
Yeah, Inception's
Yeah, because
really
like
good.
Inception was this like mind melt. Oppenheimer was not quite the mind melt, but it was yeah, it was a
Puzzle.
good it was beautifully shot. You know, he's the heir to Kurosawa right there. Um,
Do you have a favorite movie like that you like can always go back and watch, or a favorite holiday movie since it's that time of year?
well, I've always loved The Man Who Fell to Earth, and
Yes, great.
I think that's always because I've been a big Bowie fan my whole life, and
Early version, great. Yeah.
um, and then that's an alien. You know, he's like the alien, and I feel like that's my favorite Nicholas Rogue movie. But I remember when the original Matrix came out, that one really got me too because I was like feeling like the that it just the concepts in that it explained what almost what I felt like my view of spirituality was is that this reality is um just a version of reality, and the deeper higher form of reality is would be like almost like the way the Matrix worked in the movie. And then I feel like that concept went into my album that I did last year. That was like there was that song Juggernauts, and like it
Definitely.
was talking about these like juggernauts are like these like higher beings. They're like the what or there's what we would call angels or prophets, but they're waving a way out of the matrix. And like in that way, there's like kind of like Buddhism is like a way out of this reality, like a free of suffering or a oneness in the universe. Those kind of concepts really resonated with me when I was a kid watching that movie. So that's another all-time one. I've probably seen that movie a bunch of times. Yeah, so there you go. Science fiction. They're both pretty science fiction too.
Yeah, they
I
are.
mean, I'd like to say it was like Alphaville by like Jean Godard or something like but it's
The deep cuts.
or Fassbinder, Herzog, something a little with a little more fashion art avant-garde tips. But I mean, yeah, I mean, speaking of that though, I guess there was that movie Kids, which
Yeah, that's a great
sort
one.
of was like a precursor to moving in New York. Like when I moved, I saw the movie before I moved to New York, and then I'd already been living in New York for many years before I realized that I was like friends with quite a large chunk of the cast. And it just seemed like
Right.
that was that movie is a little bit accurate in the way it portrays what New York was like in the late '90s. That I moved into New York at that time as a teenager and was a downtown like kid basically. And it's just interesting because a lot of the people that acting and appearing in that movie were just people I saw out and about at like parties and where social whatever social events, art openings, bars, shows, on the street, like not living on the street, all those people having moments like that too, but not anyone that I know off the top of my head from that film. Art galleries used to be a big hangout spot back then, like because you'd have art
Yeah.
opening, and it's kind of like a party inside of an art space inside of a something that's not quite a normal party space. Yeah,
It's true.
so
Especially for New York, I think even still today, it's kind of coming back. And especially I feel like in like East Village spots, I feel like they always do really well with some of their like pop-up shows and stuff. I've seen some pretty cool ones. But to get into some like fun questions, do you have
uh-huh.
like a favorite dessert?
A favorite dessert? Oh yeah, I must have one of those. I like I I like good desserts. Maybe some creme brulee or something like that. I don't know.
Good.
Um, some like I like the Japanese sweets. Like the red bean with the like some like hot red bean with little bits of mochi in it and this like kind of
Yeah.
soup, whatever you call those things.
Yeah. Now, are with your music, would you consider yourself a spiritual person?
I think that's one of the central ingredients, at least with my solo music. And then I think it's also the central ingredient the way that I work as a producer, interacting with different artists and musicians and other producers. Is like I feel like that's I don't think of. I mean, I'll program beats, I'll do play guitar, I'll do all that kind of stuff. But really, what I'm doing is trying to um, like do my best to keep the energy flowing in a musical direction and reading the all the little creative lines and spiritual and physical boundaries that exist in recording and writing sessions.
Now, I have a personal question I wrote down for you. Um, Talking about your early days, do you remember your first mixer?
Yes, my first mixer was a PM Yamaha PM 1000.
Do you still own one today? Do you work with it?
I sold it. It was very large, and when I left New York, I had to leave all my equipment, and I sold it. Ironically, someone in LA bought it, and I shipped it across the country. Um, but yeah, that's a mixer that requires two people to lift up.
Yeah, a big
So
guy.
yeah, and it's still in it. It was considered to be the first compact mixer of its time, like console, because it was made in the '60s when compact meant two people, I guess. Yeah, a mixing desk was very much a desk in that sense.
Also, so what first got you interested in like producing and getting into the sound and like finding effects and mixing and everything? Like what interested you into that?
Well,
Got you into it?
I was never the recording guy growing up. Like I played in bands and stuff, and I had friends who had 4 tracks, and I never owned one. And they used to record, and then I started going to studios which had better, nicer equipment. But when I was 18 years old, I got a job doing sound for a production company, and it started off just running microphones, rolling up cables, and it was still an apprentice style situation where I spent a good year or so before I was ever even. I mean, it was more than a year before I even got to handle a live mic through a mixer.
Okay.
Yeah, it was just. But I learned about gain structure and the
Yeah.
fundamentals of audio engineering over the 6 years that I worked live sound. And I think towards the end of that, I ended up doing front of house at a rather large um, room. It was like a 2,000, 3,000 cap room. Like we had, and I was, because this was when I was living in New York City and I was part of the union.
Okay.
That So you would have big artists coming in and their traveling engineer wouldn't be allowed to mix the show because they weren't union. So I got to actually be on the mixed front of house for some like serious, some serious artists like Winnie Houston, for example, Naughty by Nature,
Fun
and
stuff.
various various, and then um, and this is simultaneously when I was very much downtown, part of the art scene, and a bunch of friends of mine worked at this art gallery called American Fine Arts, and one of them, who you had on your show, Dave Portner,
Yeah.
he was recording a lot of stuff, and then when he found out that I was an audio engineer, he asked if he asked to come and have me mix some stuff that he had, and then we just really hit it off in the studio. We had a lot of different um, references in common in terms of um, the way we like things sounding and stuff. And then he also taught me quite a bit. Like
Yeah.
I learned a lot about recording initially from him because he had been recording a lot more than I had. Recorded the first couple albums by himself, and he even recorded a Black Dice album. And
Yeah. Right.
um, so I think that I was bringing in a lot more like I was at the time I was really interested in space and physics and waveforms and stereo-ness and getting different things in a room and finding different like 3D style illusions that you could do with audio using actual microphones and then combine those with effects and this was like at an interesting time too when we were still recording on tape but also working on computers simultaneously. We had the two
Yeah.
synced up together. So
The
it was
computer was pretty new, right? At that point,
it was
like
very new
to
and very
transfer
hard to get
songs
it to
to.
work. Yeah.
Okay. And
So
like, what was your experience like mixing and recording on the tape for like a little bit then?
that was what I started on. It was very much the principles of live. It was a lot closer to what you would experience like with live sound or something where you actually had audio analog signals and like a tape machine. You had to demagnetize the heads. You had to clean this playback or clean the playback heads with like alcohol. So just and that was just the starting point. Just and then let alone like get the structure right. You have DBX if you wanted to do noise reduction. And so just getting things to hit record and play back was quite an ordeal.
Okay.
Ideally, you would put tones on the tape. If you had to switch between tape machines, different calibrations, there's different speeds you could go. But there's also a lot of fun tricks you could do. You could record things backwards. You could go. You can record at different speeds and get different pitches. And it was like, yeah, I mean that was like the classic way if you wanted to have like a interesting like different pitched vocal. This is like the original pitch shifter. You slow down the tape and then you sing in key with whatever is on the tape. And then when you play it back at the normal speed, you have this high vocal part that's perfectly in tune, if you sing perfectly in tune at least, because it's always going to stay in tune with itself. And,
Right.
and and I feel like in that sort of view of things carried on to this day, where although I work on the computer, when I look at the arrangement window, I still think in terms of what the sounds are doing, not so much what I see on there. And that's one difference between me and a lot of younger producers is that they're very they grew up with the computer, so they're like, okay, where's the bridge? Where's the pre-chorus? Where's like the verse? This is verse two, and they have it all mapped out. Obviously, on tape, you don't really map that kind of stuff out. You have it mapped out in the from the structure itself. So I can look really quickly and be like, I could just see immediately, like, okay, we're doing 16 bars here, we're doing this and this stuff. I could have the whole song in my head and where every bar is and even have it counted out. And I would never have to label that on the computer because that's just already stuck in my head. And so I think some people that I work with, they're like, oh, how come you never label anything? I'm like, well, it's just like I know that at the second chorus doesn't hit until like 40 or whatever, how many 48 bars in. So it's like, why are we going to spend all this time labeling it when I might want to copy and paste or, because it's the just
Yeah.
coming from that different world. Yeah, it was interesting. I definitely started doing this at a time when things were changing very fast.
And like with that, you seem to still like, work with a lot of different bands and also work on your own music. So like whenever you were working on a project, did it kind of like, inspire you to go ahead and start recording or practicing and doing like your own stuff too?
Well, I mean, the only reason I really started recording other people was because the Animal Collective stuff got successful and other people started asking me to. That was never the original plan, but it
Oh,
worked
okay.
out. But
So let's step back then. Whenever you first got introduced to record for Animal Collective, what was that like?
well, that was just because I was friends with Dave, and then I became pretty good friends with the rest of the band, especially Noah Panda Bear, and because and him and I still work together,
On this
now.
new song, Mirror, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's,
Um,
it's out there, guys.
so, but then I think like immediately after that, I was working with like White Magic was a friend of ours. It just started off with just other friends in the New York scene.
Hmm.
Then eventually I had like I remember TV on the radio had me come in and do a remix on something, and um, same with Grizzly Bear, and then Domino Records eventually started hiring me to do stuff, and I worked with Owen Pallet, and
Yeah,
so
yeah.
after a number, 5 years, I'd probably done bunch of albums at that point.
Right.
And and then and then uh, at one point, like I stopped. I had like I was releasing my own solo music at the beginning of all this, and then I started like I was touring a lot with my solo project, but then I had a band that I was touring with, like um, Jesse, who played on Afraid, was playing in the band. He was playing mostly drums, and then Mino Ohashi was playing keyboard, and it just seemed like it didn't make sense to call it a solo project anymore. So we came up with a band name called The Present, and then that's why I didn't really release solo records until recently, because there was The Present the rest of the remainder of the time that I was living in New York. And then also I became busier and busier as a producer. I started working in Afro pop, but even before that, I was working in footwork with like DJ Rashad and Tech Live. And I started working in China a lot and in J-pop, but specifically I started working in China and African music, and then I started working in Latin music, like reggaeton and Latin trap in Mexico and Chile, and that's what sort of brought me to LA. And yeah, and it just I was just really happy to like meet so many great artists and work on so many different types of music, that my own solo music just wasn't really the priority during that time, and it wasn't until I got really heavy into producing that I felt like I needed that songwriting outlet for myself as well.
Yeah.
And I
And
do feel like I've been producing a lot since, like, in the last 5 years. I've really produced more than I did like on all the years leading up to it. It's been I feel like LA has just been a really good place to do that for me.
and also like you know, with your new music right now, like you're still adding on like the new collaborators and also people that you've worked with, and also have done their stuff. Did you ever kind of like take a step back and was like this is the time for me to start like developing that one idea that I had for that song, or was it still just like, no, I'll finish this product and get this out there, and then like I'll get back to like what I have like separately?
Well, I was working in like a lot of different stuff, but I was doing a lot of rap sessions in 2019 and early 2020, and I'd gotten pretty far away from the like the type of stuff you hear me making on my solo music.
Right.
And but then I had a nervous breakdown, or a psychological breakdown, and I was hospitalized involuntarily. It sucked. And when I got out, I was experiencing quite a bit of PTSD. Is that what you call it? Post-traumatic stress syndrome. Yeah.
Definitely would.
And I just had a guitar nearby, and I started remembering all these song ideas that I had for decades, even. And then that's how High Reality came along. Was I just like piecing together these songs and then just slow things, and it was more, like I said, like a healing process. But then what happened with New Wave in California was, like, I already had since I had released High Reality, there was a little bit of a platform there. So just, well, why not make more songs? And so now it's actually become part of what I do. I mean, my priority is like for the most part, it's like I still think of myself first as a producer, and then also a mixer, and an art, and the solo music is amazing. It's just that I don't earn. It's really hard to make money doing that, and I would love it if I can make money doing that. But what's happened is, I notice, is that it's actually cost like money more. Like, you know, it's a significant investment to release an album.
Definitely is.
And that's why,
For no reason. For
and I have no problem with it. But I think that's like, because like people will like like, you know, like they'll a lot of, like, for instance, if um most of the, like, I of course I have friends on Instagram and stuff like that, but I imagine like a lot of the people who follow me might, because of my productions or something, they don't realize. But the yeah, it takes a lot to make that, to release that music, and then that's why I feel like my current approach is just to do the singles and do everything myself, and try to grow the music project proportionately to what um to the feedback I'm getting from people. So
Yeah.
yeah, so like I hope that I get to tour the material more, and I get to do more, and the ultimate dream would just be to like um be like, I feel like working on my own music now, I feel like working on this other thing, and do that. But I do feel like myself as I view myself as a working musician. So every day I got to make a song, and and I'm just fortunate to be in a position to do that. And there's so much great talent out there that like yeah, and it's also like when I'm producing it, it's I feel like I'm able to like think in terms of this very um large picture of what the audience could be, or even my own self or the artist, and just like pull something out of the artist. um and with my own music, I don't feel that pressure. I feel like it's the it's for me, you know. um and and I think all artists make music first for themselves. So in a sense, like maybe there isn't that big a difference between producing other people and producing and making my own music. I don't know. But I just know with with the way that it actually pans out currently, that I have to make a lot of other music in order to make my own music,
But
logistically.
do you ever find it like challenging, like taking on other people's music to mix and master or to even collaborate? Like, do you ever kind of like, ah, like what am I doing now? Or whenever, like maybe if they like are giving you ideas and you're not sure if you're gonna hit it or something too?
I mean, it's always challenging. I think you can't really force stuff, and like we all
Yeah.
have those days where it's just like, okay, maybe it's work. Like you'll have days where it's just like, oh my gosh, this is like amazing, and I love it so much. And you'll have other days where like you're making the best of it. But I think like who you are one day is not the same as who you are the next day, and every day has a valid um is a valid it's valid to express yourself on every other day. So you shouldn't really be too precious about the results. Just as long as you're creating, then that's what matters. And I like artists that are just down to create. And I feel like the stuff that usually does the best is the stuff that you don't really worry too much about anyways too. So it's kind of like yeah, it's like worrying about like how well it's gonna do, or does it hit this, you know, these certain things. I think we're just
Yeah.
I've been doing this a long time. And I have like, but I feel like I'm still very like a kid almost. Like, you know, it's like every day is like a new day, and I'm always like some new idea is exciting.
Now, do you have like a favorite memory working on music in general, like from either past or recent?
I mean, I just always like working on music. Like I've been working with this artist named Critter, and they're just like blown saying the craziest stuff like in the microphone. We're just like making stuff, and I was just thinking the other day when they came in, I'm like, ah, I feel very lucky to be just to get to like be in here making songs with this young poet. Oh, uh,
Right.
I'm putting things in a very um you know um I don't know how. I figure you got a family audience on this show. No,
I don't know about that.
yeah, and then so yeah, and I mean yeah, I just I had a great artist in last week from Ottawa, Fan Club Wallet had a lot of like a really good time, like kind of like took this like left field direction, like we were doing this like almost like funky kind of like post punk bass line, and then it like switched into this like dreamy, almost dream pop moment, and went back to like that post punk vibe, and I was like,
Okay, very
whoa,
cool.
that was dope. Yeah, so I'll be like in like some kind of rap R&B world, or I'll be in like an indie pop psychedelic world. I'll be in a post punk dream pop world. And I'll do like some new shoegaze with like grunge tool chords, or some like Latin alternative reggaeton, like all in the same week.
Yeah.
Like you know, so yeah,
You have
like
to say
that's
because
I
it
just feel like
puts you in
that's
all the worlds.
amazing right there. Like I have an amazing life to be able to do all that kind of music in the same week with different artists every day. Like I mean, like how many people get to do that? I'm like blessed as to the fullest, you know. Um, so I haven't, yeah, I'm just really amazed to even be here doing this.
With this one's kind of funny actually. Hold on. Uh, what would you consider a guilty pleasure?
Like musically,
Artistically can be.
I mean, I like I guess like with films and even books, like I'll like with music, I feel like my taste goes so deep, and it's like almost relentless how deep I'll dive into any kind of genre or artist. But when it comes to other disciplines, I'll go right in for like the blockbusters, like the Basquiat's and the like the r- Renaissance painters. Like that's not quite a guilty pleasure.
No,
Well,
but definitely adds up.
the Nathan Fielder comedy, the Eric Andres and the Tim and Eric, like those are all. But I feel like we got to go a little guiltier than that. That's definitely like standard for somebody doing what I do, who identifies as male and identifies as a music producer and identifies as living in LA. I think those are not that outrageous of guilty pleasures right there.
Yeah.
And like even something, if I say like I like George Michael, that's also not a guilty pleasure. Or Kylie Minogue, it's like okay, yeah, it's cool to like that kind of stuff. So those don't really work.
Have you
Um,
seen the new Wham documentary?
oh, I gotta watch that. I heard about that. I should
It's
like that.
it
Yeah,
is really good. It's thorough and sweet.
yeah. I got it. Panda Express. I like that stuff. That Panda
Oh
Express.
yeah,
That's yeah,
it's
especially having spent
dirty.
all that time in mainland China. It's like although I'd say that from what I know about Chinese food, that's much more like Hong Kong style than it is mainland Chinese food. The way the Panda Express works. Um, you,
I have to say they don't pile in the rice either.
uh,
Now, do you have like a favorite, like, I mean, outside of like your own music, do you have like a favorite song or band that you like go back and listen to every day, or like you still like identify with?
um, I mean, like I already mentioned like how big a fan I was of Bowie growing up and stuff. But and then like yeah, there's like classics like Parliament, Funkadelic,
Yeah.
um and like all of those Orbit or Sun Ra, or um like Roxy Music Eno, like those glam '70s productions, stuff like um This Heat, or even stuff like just, I was like a bit of an Anglophile, like I like everything from the Smiths to um Happy Mondays, particularly like that Midland sound. um and then the '90s I really got into like the jungle and drum and bass, or the shoegaze, My Bloody Valentine, and stuff like that. But I tend to listen to a lot of rap, but not as much. I actually, it's funny because like I do feel like I'll keep up with it, but I haven't really found I think maybe the Danny Brown and JPEG
Oh yeah.
Mafia album. I really like that one. But I'm trying to think of like another album. Like I'm really excited about
I
Paris
listened to
Breaking
the
True.
new Earl sweatshirt recently. The new Earl
Uh,
sweatshirt's really cool.
oh,
He
actually, I think I heard that too. I haven't heard that yet, so that would
he
be a good one. Yeah.
collaborated with Alchemist on this, and Alchemist
Uh,
typically does, instrumentals. And yeah, so whenever you're like listening to music and stuff, do you kind of like, oh, like I like how this sounds, and try to like take like that sound production back whenever you go and work on music, or do you kind of like to not emulate as much?
I used to do that, but now I just realize like if it's sounding good and you got like usually that's what I like about collaborating with people. Like if I could tell if the people in the room are into what I'm doing, then I'm like, okay, we're rolling with that. And the next
Yeah.
is gonna be good too. And I feel like um I could get all kinds of crazy sounds in this studio, you know. I got this like wow like one of my main keyboards is this thing like the Korg Waste State. Um
Oh, very cool.
like
That's
I
some
got and I've like trick this thing out. I got like something like thousands and thousands of my own presets on this, and then I could
right,
sit here
yeah.
going like doing wild stuff with that, or um, I got stuff on my computer. I run my guitar through, and then the analog synths, and there's pianos and drum kits and stuff like that. But like, um, if something's sounding fresh right here, like that's gonna be good, and we'll roll with it. And the artist is feeling it, then we're gonna make a good song out of it, and um and it'll happen fast and it'll feel really um musical and like natural. And if you're trying to say like I want to go for this Tyler the Creator vibe or something, then it's not going to work as good because I'm not Tyler the Creator, you know, like so like
Definitely.
why would I try to like sound like somebody else? um it's not like I mean it's like
No,
especially
personally, as somebody that makes music too, like whenever you have over friends and circles and you're just like smoking weed, drinking, it's like, and you're making beats, it's like, oh, make something that's like these artists, and it's always like a very, the top mainstreams, and you're like, I mean, I can probably do something similar, but it's probably going to still sound more like what I do.
Well,
And then,
sometimes I think the when it works like that is when you're just doing something. You're like, oh, that kind of sounds like that fucking Joji song or something, and
definitely,
you're
definitely.
like, oh, but it's okay because it's different because I made it over here. And then you're like, and then it's normal, like or not. It's not normal's the wrong word. It's natural. But if you're like go in trying to sound like something else, like my fear is like not sound like so now that said, I worked in China where I had a basically a lot of what I did was like taking reproducing beats that had already been done in the West, and
Right.
and I was shocked at how willing they went along. So and that's something I could do, and that's something that I could like if an artist wants to sound like something, I could do my best, you know, and make and go for that vibe. Or and so it's like it's definitely something that and I had to do that for many years of my career. So I feel like I'm in a very like that's why you could tell I'm really feeling good about where I'm at right now because I don't really have to do that kind of stuff right now. So we're just making stuff and it's because there's many years where like it was very much like people saying I want to sound like this and I have to get it to sound like that. Um,
Now, I'm gonna go and check and see if I'm gonna try and pack another bowl, but talk a little bit about this show that you just had.
that was a fundraiser for this organization
Who
called Theater of Hearts,
who
and
all was involved too? Sorry.
so that was like put on by um, my one of the main friends and artists that I work with, Jackie Mendoza. Her cousin is works with the organization. He organized the event at Zebulon, um, and Jackie and I performed. We each did a set, and she also came up on stage, and we had she was on New Wave in California on a song. We did a song Halo Dive together, so we played that, and it's just a way of raising awareness and raising funds for Theater of Hearts. And what they do is they help youth who are at risk or um, in other um, like difficult circumstances, mostly in here in Los Angeles, in the city, um, and provides art education and um, art studio and environments for you might say, at-risk or disadvantaged youth. And it was cool to play live. Um, and I want to do more live, but I was also thinking afterwards, I'm like, I'm so excited I get to go back in the studio and just make music now. I think what it'll be like, I'll it'll be good to tour when I tour next time, but it's just got to be the right tour because it takes, because then when you're playing live, you have to put like I take playing live very seriously, so there's a lot of preparation and rehearsal that goes into it, and then when you do it every night, it um it it, it gets better. So
I agree.
yeah, I look forward to doing that. Right now, I am very stoked to just be able to work on music in the studio.
Now, whenever you're also like working on music in the studio, do you kind of start with like a certain process, or, like whenever like to prep? You know what I mean? Like, are you trying to like set certain
Well, I'll
stuff up?
usually listen to the music that the artist has already released before they come in. And then we'll talk about what they listen to and what they've been feeling, and we'll listen to that. And sometimes they'll send me like a playlist of stuff that they like, and we'll just kind of get like figure out like what ballpark we're in, and then if it like if they play instruments, I'll usually try to we'll maybe start with that, or if I have something going and they say they like it, but it's always like it's like, yeah, I like it. Like if they're like if they play guitar or bass or piano or something and they're just jamming and they're already feeling an idea, we'll start with that. And if not, we could also do starters. Like start like I could give directions and what have you. Like, and there are artists that I work with that purely do vocals, and so sometimes I'll I'll have like some synth sounds like in advance that I think that might match the vibe. And and when I work with an artist a lot, like then I also could say like I get an idea for what they're feeling, so I could actually be like, hey, check out this, check out this. And sometimes I'll have like drums already like ready to go, and not the
Right.
actual beat but the sounds. I do tend to start with melodies and chord progressions, and then get some vocal vibes if possible, if or it doesn't have to. um, and and then but drums come after the melody and chords, and just because like there's a lot of different ways you can go with the drums, and I like to try to like I don't always know if it's going to be like hard or like how intense the energy is going to be. And so, but yeah, if you start with the chords and the sounds and the vibe, then you could kind of make the drums to suit. Um, or if there's real drums, then I don't play drum kit that good, so like I like to. Yeah, so most of the time, if I'm in charge of the drums myself, it's going to be a combination of programming, maybe with some extra percussion or organic elements, or sampling or something. But then I have like friends who are just sick on the drum kit, and we'll use the actual drums or a combination of the two.
Right.
And I do drum kit stuff myself, like I did on High Reality. That was all drum kit, but I played it like I was a drum machine. Like I played the hi hat first, and then the snare second, or like whatever, or kick every element separate one at a time, so that I can get the part that I heard in my head, which is not how you record a drum kit. If
Yeah,
you're
so you were doing tracking, or was like everything plugged in towards where that would be in its own like in its own little lane?
for those I wanted real drum sound, and I wanted to play everything myself. But I would start usually with like the kick and snare, and then do a hi-hat, and then do cymbals, and then do toms or whatever is required,
Right.
and I do them all
Yeah.
separate from each other to a click, the same way as if you were like programming a beat but with the real drums. Because I could handle like the individual parts. What I can't handle is right foot, left foot, other hands, because that's like a special skill, just like
It
but I am
is.
a guitar player who can do that.
Yeah, I'm about to say it's an acquired skill. But I will mention for the friend that did the guitar stuff on Afraid, that riff and that melody, very very cool. I mean, very cool lick, and it comes together really nicely with the beats and stuff.
Well, the acoustic guitar part is what, yeah, Jesse started that, and then the piano part I is the is I played that, and then Noah, who played the bass, he also played the electric guitar, but it kind of echoes the piano melody. And
Right, I see.
yeah,
In
so
sync, in tune together.
I feel like yeah, Jesse Noah and I have like a nice thing because we also did yeah, we did a number of songs. Yeah, actually, I have a lot of songs with that team that haven't even been released yet. Noah was on 3 songs on New Wave in California. He was on Juicy Lambo,
Okay,
Smile Song, and Rule of Three. Yeah, and Jesse was on Rule of Three as well. Um, but yeah, no, yeah, Noah's has a yeah, because I worked on his solo. I mixed his last solo album for his project Bedroom, and yeah, and he was doing that. So, and he just actually ended up being one of my main collaborators over the last year. Um, really talented musician from Nashville, and yeah, talented on every front.
now, do you remember your first concert that you ever went to?
I believe I do. I mean, in terms of like bands and concerts style, like not counting like um, something school. I believe it was Primus with the Melvins.
Oh,
Um,
whoa. I'm a fan of both. Like that would have been epic. Good to
yeah,
where,
Melvins
what time
opening.
was that?
That was in my hometown, and for
Oh,
us,
fun.
the yeah, which is crazy because like the Melvins opened up for that show, and like looking back, it's like yeah, I could see that, but like I do feel like Melvins are have such a larger music legacy in my mind
Yeah.
now. Like they're just like they're the Melvins, and Primus is they're like I don't know, like I feel like I don't hate it, but it was like definitely like more suited to like my youthful phase. I
No.
grew up a skateboarder, and like I remember like watching, gosh, what there was one skater who had like always skated the Primus songs. That's how I found out about them. Like there's a
Whoa.
lot of music I learned from skate videos. It's interesting, yeah.
I would say that about like for me, like if there wasn't Tony Hawk games, I probably wouldn't have given like rock music the stronghold that I like grew up
Oh,
on. Definitely. I mean, besides like because before I say my own taste was like Jimi Hendrix and The Doors and like I was more of a Pink Floyd guy than like the Beatles, but um and also to mention like do you remember your first show that you ever set up?
I was I had a band. It was like a punk band, and when I was 14, and actually no, we played at the school talent show. That was our first actual show, and after that, we started playing like out and around town at like local shows. And yes, and that was, and then every year after that, I never went looked back because I started with the punk band, then I had like a hardcore band, which is like with like metal mixed with punk,
Okay.
um, and then I got really into like I kind of wanted to back away from punk and hardcore, and I was really into The Cure and Bob Marley, and
Yeah.
that's a really bizarre switch right there, but it was like I said, I got into reggae and I got into Cure at the same time, and I had a band that like kind of reflected that. And then, but yeah, it was. Um, I think it was all the way up until around the time I moved to New York. I was always thinking in terms of bands, but then when I got into electronic music, I was like, wow, you don't even have to have a band. You can make the the entirety of the sound yourself, and that was really mind blowing to me. Although now it's just I feel like what matters is like energy with people. So if you're in a room with energy, it's like that's the collaboration, and I think that's what's cool about the session world of being a producer is that it's like the kind of collaboration level of that you get like while playing in bands, um, but
Definitely.
they're without this whole identity of a band identity, but you still get that collaborative like that like what's the end result is more than the sum of its parts.
I'll get into some fun questions for you. On this
Okay.
one, this one is a classic vibe osmosis question. All right.
All right.
I won't hold you up too much longer either. So if you're stranded on an island, and you could only take one thing with you, what would you bring?
And we're assuming they got water and stuff like that. So, all right.
Yeah, I like my point of view is like this island is like Leonardo DiCaprio's The Island movie, The Beach.
Oh wow.
Yeah. Where it's like, oh, random people are here and there's weed.
Uh-huh. Well, I'm bringing uh, like a, a big bag of coffee. No, I'm just kidding. I'm bringing a guitar, acoustic guitar, because it's like now I don't know. That's an interesting point though, because it's like the guitar. I feel like do you get to write? Like I feel like I would want to write too.
That's a good point too. Like, yeah, if you were like, I gotta maybe write in the sand, and then it gets blown away, and you're like, I was writing my own novel here.
Yeah, I mean, like having like pen and ample supply of pen and paper would be nice, but then also it's like um having a guitar would be extremely nice too. So I don't know. Like I'm such a I yeah, it would be one of those two. But my instinct originally was guitar because it's just like you're like out there on the beach, you're just like playing Bob Marley's no, no, you're just like I need to get back into that level of guitar playing where you're not even because now the problem is when I pick up a guitar, if I play something I like, I'm like, oh, okay, I got to turn that into a song, and I record it, make a note, and immediately I'm like, that gets purpose into the song. Like I don't just sit there for like hours going like jamming off into the ether, like there
I
always
guess
is like a purpose.
Jimi Hendrix is one of those guys that could just carry the guitar and like just play to play and like and like play to practice and like that's where I'm like, whoa, like that's a lot of dedication to be like I'm taking this wherever I possibly can go so I can like get the vibe out.
Well, Jimi Hendrix is one of the most gifted guitar players of all time, and he just didn't. Yeah, so yeah, I don't know what
Different
to say.
era.
I did like experience this band from Mali before. I think they were called like Kyra Arbe, and the guitar player from that band was also a lefty and just was like
Yeah,
like you just like
had it in them.
yeah, and I've never really had it like that with guitar. Like, oh, go figure. I'm not as good as Jimi Hendrix, but yeah, and it would be cool. Like, but I do feel like you could just get in those zones.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Hey, all right, so about the music though, this last question is kind of summing up the thing though. About your music, like whenever you're tracking, what do you like to use tracking wise?
I use whatever is there. Um, like,
So you don't mind like using GarageBand if you got to, or like you don't have like a major preference or
oh
anything?
no, I use my major preference is Ableton, and
Yeah, okay.
yeah, or Pro Tools if I don't like. I also will use Pro Tools or
Makes sense.
Logic. Those are the three. But Ableton is sort of my go-to for producing, and I do like using nice stuff, like like if it's there. So but I recognize that you don't have to have like insane mics and pre's to make an amazing record.
Yeah,
But that
yeah.
said, if I have amazing mics and pre's and instruments, then I'm definitely like using those.
So this is the last one, but for the people that have never listened to your music, how would you go about describing it to them?
My solo music or my productions?
Your music, yeah, your
My solo
solo.
music, I just would say that it's psychedelic indie pop that is like if you're into like stuff like Tame Impala or even more of like stuff from my like musical community of my past, like Panda Bear
Definitely.
and stuff like that, then it might make sense to you. But I have like my own flavor, which tends to be like a bit more abstract and avant-garde in some of the sounds you might hear, but the music itself is very spiritual, and I feel like they're kind of like prayers, or there's a lot of like human relations in some of the songs too, like love. You know, like that recent single I did is like it's a love unrequited love song. It's like a probably like the most like straightforward love song I've ever made. But there's always going to be a twist because there's the structure is a little bit atypical in that the chorus doesn't repeat, the melody repeats, but the lyrics kind of twist, and only the
Definitely.
final line of the chorus, the turn up the silence, that repeats 3 times in the song, and there's this bridge. But even that concept, like turn up the silence, that's a paradox, that phrase, like how do you turn up silence. So you'll find paradoxes in my music, and the deeper you dig, the more you're going to get out of it. So please enjoy, listen deeply, over and over again.
And anybody you want to shout out, or any music you been listening to you want to mention before we go?
I'm gonna shout out just some of the artists that I'm working with right now. I got to shout out Critter. If you guys haven't heard Critter, check them out. They got really good songs. Check out Andrew Garden. Check out Yauska. Check out Fan Club Wallet. Check out Mars Argo. Check out um, um, let's see. Check out Panda Bear and Animal Collective. I'm sure you guys have already checked them out, but if you haven't, you're in for a big treat. Check out like old friends of mine like White Magic and Gang Dance. I would say check out Dino de Santiago, who's a good friend of mine, who's also on the last Panda Bear album that I co-produced with along with Noah Panda Bear. Check out Bedroom, and check out yeah, these are all artists that I recommend, that I've been around, that I think are doing really sick stuff. Check out Model Child for sure.
Definitely.
Um, and check out Teddy Geiger. And I could probably keep going, but I feel like, oh, check out Jackie Mendoza, and then also
right.
my friends, if you're listening, and I didn't name your project first. Don't this is in no particular order. I want you to check all this stuff. So Jackie and Danny and Teddy, like don't think that I like you could be at first. Be anywhere. Be anywhere on the list. That's what I say. Be on, yeah. Check out Spirit Navigators.
Right. Shout out. Thank you.
Uh,
Well, I appreciate you taking this time.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me on. I'm glad we got to connect over virtual reality.
For real. For real.
We're in the
All
metaverse right now, folks.
Right.